Hey everybody. Oop, I am not in center frame. Let me scoot over. Give it a second for the delay to catch up. How's everybody doing? It is Thursday afternoon, and guess what? I don't have any water, because that's what I do. Welcome everybody. It's the Monster Workshop stream on Thursdays. How's y'all's doing? Great. How y'all doing, everybody? I had kind of a weird day. I've been having some sleep trouble. So I did this weird thing where I stayed up super late and then went to bed in the morning and then overslept because that's my messed up life. But yeah, today we are going to be designing a monster that I have been putting off for weeks and weeks to try to catch up on my backlog. Today is the Gelatinous Cube. Well, I shouldn't say designing a monster. We're going to be redesigning a monster. The Gelatinous Cube featured in last week's episode, or last week in a podcast episode several weeks ago, on the with a special guest, Jeffrey Golden. And it's gonna be a wacky one today, folks. We have a lot of weirdness to get through here. We might use the whole time for once, because I feel like a lot of these monster design streams only end up using like a portion of the kind of 2-hour block that I've set aside for the stream. But the cube might get us there because we have a lot of ideas to implement. So before we can do that, though, of course, I have to go get some water because I forgot to get water, because now I can't not think about that. It's in my brain. So I'll be back in like 30 seconds once I have some water, and then we will dive into the cube. BRB, everybody. Nobody panic, I am back. All right, let's dive in. Slide my chair down here. Okay. So we have the Gelatinous Cube today. This is a large CR2 ooze. It's probably one of the most unique monsters. I mean, it's definitely one of the most iconic monsters, but even just from a design standpoint, it's probably one of the most unique monsters in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, because it has a lot of weird exceptions. In addition to it being an ooze, so it's got its normal, blind sight and, immunities to things like that. It has a bunch of things that make it just kind of strange. It's got an extremely low armor class, 6 armor class, almost impossible to miss. It's got 15-foot speed, so it's really slow. It's got this huge stat ability called Ooze Cube, where it takes up its entire space. Other creatures can enter the space, but if a creature that does so is subjected to the cube's engulf, and it's disadvantaged on the saving throw. Like, it's got a bunch of stuff that encompasses kind of how it works. It's transparent. It's got this pseudopod ability, which is kind of the most standard thing about it. And then it has this big, long engulf power that lets it, kind of phagocytosis devour other creatures. So it's hey, what's up, Nuker Wolf? Jello. Yeah, absolutely. Jello was very frightening. I'm still frightened of Jello. But for as iconic as the cube is, I gotta be honest, I was a little disappointed with its implementation in 5th edition. I don't think there's anything wrong with this monster. I don't think it's poorly designed, but I feel like 5th edition kind of always goes to the lowest common denominator with some of these monsters, right? They're always interested in what is the base block, and they never really iterate beyond that, right? There's not a lot usually to recommend some of these monsters. I think the cube works pretty well as the cube. But I feel like one of the things we talked about in our podcast episode, which you can check out at the link above, there's a lot I think you could do to improve the Gelatinous Cube and make it a more interesting, more dynamic monster. So let's go through some of those things that we talked about. Again, shout out to Jeffrey Golden. Oh, I should have his Twitter handle, that way you guys can follow him. Let me pull it up. But shout out to Jeffrey Golden, my co-host on this episode, or my guest on this episode. He came prepared. He came loaded for bear. He had a lot of ideas about the cube and how he wanted to see it implemented. You can follow him just at Jeffrey Golden on Twitter. Check him out. He's a good dude. Great game designer. He's designed a very popular DM's Guild product called Target Run, which is like a he describes it as like a Caddyshack meets Dungeons and Dragons, right? It's like a sports comedy game, which I've yet to open, but it sounds cool. Great. So gelatinous cubes, let's talk about them. So the first thing is we had this big debate on the podcast about the gelatinous cube's pseudopod ability. So as you can see under its actions, it's got a regular attack, a +4 to hit with a 5-foot reach. It's one creature for 3d6 acid damage. So it's got this kind of amoeba-like, slapping you with one of its pseudopods, which I understand why they have it, and it has definitely come and gone throughout the course of the cube's history, right? Sometimes they have them, sometimes they don't. Jeffrey and I kind of landed on different sides of this debate. He was sort of pro pseudopod, though he would have wanted to redesign them pretty substantially into these kind of like long tendrils that could grab you and pull you towards the cube. I took a different approach. I definitely think that the cube needs some way to slow down its prey or to attack or do something. But my idea was, rather than was to remove the pseudopod attack and instead give it like a slime trail power. The conceit being that you, when you encounter a cube, it's not that it's coming towards you, it's that it has already passed by. And so you step into the hallway and you step into its like transparent, goopy slime trail, and you get stuck there, and then it kind of like rolls back towards you. Which I think is cool, and I like the idea of the time of that, right? You get stuck in it, and then it's about trying to pry your feet out of the goop, if you can, as the cube comes towards you. So that's my idea. He also wanted to talk about like a paralyzation thing, which I think is cool. If it's a slime trail, it feels tough because I'm not sure how you get paralyzed through the foot. Maybe it's just like a constitution save every round. It's kind of like sending, this paralysis up your body. So I think we could still do that too, right? To incorporate his paralysis idea, which I think it also has had at different times in its past. So it's like, if you're going to do the pseudopod, like, okay, I could see it doing that. But like, there's this weird thing where the pseudopod only has a 5-foot reach, right? And it's an action. So this means the cube like moves forward. It moves up to its speed. How firm you want your Jello cubes? Yeah, and I think that was a big part of it too. Was that like I don't like the idea of the cube like kind of breaking its own shape. Like if it can extend a pseudopod, then to me it has no reason to keep this cube shape if it can like sludge forward, right? Why is it staying in this very inefficient shape if it could extend pseudopods and pull itself along? So to me, it's like the minute you give it a pseudopod, it's like there's no reason for it to be moving at that slow speed. Then it could kind of just be more like a black pudding and kind of like slither across the ground. So I want to remove the pseudopod and instead give it the slime trail. But from a pure mechanical standpoint, like if the pseudopod had like a 10-foot reach, I could kind of understand it, but it's got a 5-foot reach, and it's an action. So that means that like the pseudopod attack exists purely for the rare scenario where the cube moves up to its speed but doesn't get close enough to engulf a target, where it moves 15 feet and it gets 5 feet away from someone. So only in a scenario where someone is 20 feet away from the cube can the cube move its speed and then use a pseudopod attack. It's just like, there's vanishingly small instances in which this will come up, especially because the party can just generally keep away from it. Which brings us perfectly to our second problem, that I believe that the cube is just far too slow. Like, I understand the conceit, right, of this like slow creeping dread, and I think maybe combined with the slime trail, that could potentially work, right? Like if the point is that you're stuck and then it's advancing kind of slowly. But Jeffrey had this really cool idea, and this might go into our third category a little bit, but he had this idea of the cube being actually a little quicker, but maybe only when it is when it hasn't eaten anything. right? So when it has no one inside of the cube, when it's not dissolving anyone, then it moves at a much faster pace. It's when it has engulfed someone that it slows way down. I think what he's trying to imagine is kind of like an Indiana Jones boulder situation where the cube is coming after you and you have to try to find some way to get away from it. You know, the you don't have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun your friend, kind of an idea that if you trip somebody, then the cube will catch them and eat them, and then you can get away. So I really like that. That might make it a different type of cube, because I feel like if we already have the slime trail, there's a weird combo of it having the slime trail and it being fast. But I love the idea of the speed kind of fluctuating depending on how recently the cube is eaten. And then lastly, this one is kind of like a bigger catch-all, is that like it's such a classic monster. The Gelatinous Cube is, I think, one of the 4 most iconic monsters. We've been talking about this in the podcast. I think it's like the Cube, the Beholder, the Owlbear, and the Rust Monster, to me, are like the 4 D&D specific, you don't see these anywhere else, hyper classic monsters. But it's only CR2. So once you kind of get past 2nd or 3rd level, there's really not a lot of context into which you should be encountering a cube, right? You're going to be too high level, too powerful. It's got 6 AC, it's got 84 hit points, it's got some condition immunities, but no resistances or anything like that. So, like, if you want the cube to be a meaningful part of a higher level adventurer's life, that's a pretty tall order. So we were talking about the idea of there being all these different types of cubes, that cubes could take on different powers depending on what it is that they eat, right? So we had a few different ideas here. I might add Speedy Cube onto this one. We would obviously have to come up with different names for them. But we talked about the idea of like an Illusory Cube, that a cube that eats a wizard or an illusionist then has the ability to kind of like project, almost like mimic style, like walls and doors and things like onto it, right? So that way people can accidentally walk into one. We talked about the idea of a super cube, like a cube that is much bigger, maybe a cube that has eaten other cubes, right? That has kind of like smashed into them and then grown in size. So that's a very like simple way to improve its CR, is just to say it's vastly bigger. The stealthy cube, kind of leaning more into its stealth ability. It's got that transparent thing, right? But you maybe make a power where when it doesn't move on its turn, it turns totally invisible or whatever. It has something like Illusory Cube in that way, but we talked about the idea of like a sneaky rogue cube. And then Baby Cube was, this is what I mean, wacky ideas. I think we compared it at one point to Gremlins too, right? Where it's like, now there's all these different kinds of Gremlins. But the Baby Cube is the idea that they reproduce by budding. So like they can rather than being split like an ochre jelly or whatever, that like they kind of like produce these little tiny cubes that move around and follow you. So the notion of like an even lower CR one, like almost like a cube minion, right, that you can have be kind of scooting around and trying to eat you. Probably they don't have engulf, but they might have like an attach ability similar to like a Sturge. That could be kind of cool. And then of course Speedy Cube, that is much quicker, but then once it starts to digest, it slows it way down. So those are our improvements for the cube. That's kind of what we're looking for here. I think we're going to start with the generic cube and come up with the slime trail power and add that in there. And then maybe we'll go and we'll break down. I'm trying to decide if we should give the increased speed to the cube, to the standard cube, or if that should be its own type of cube. Because I feel like we already have a lot of alternate cubes. But I guess 5 is a nice round number. If you have any ideas for other cube variants, feel free to put them in the chat and we can add them to the list as well. Because I like the idea of our Patreon post having a lot of alternate cube ideas. It would also be cool to like try to figure out what are the CRs for these cubes to make them kind of scalable. Great, so let's start with just putting in the slime trail ability, and then we can decide if we want to keep the racing cube or not. It's just such a silly monster, you guys. It's just so silly. So we're gonna hop over to TetraCube. Speaking of cubes, this is a website that I use to do a lot of my monster design. Let me zoom out a little bit. That way it is a little bit more visible. There we go. That's better. Let me check the overlay here. Yeah, that's fine. No, I'm not. Still not in frame. Let me scoot over. That's be a manga where the MC races slimes and everybody looks down on them, but he has all different kinds. Yeah, totally, right? Like, it definitely has a little bit of that, like, slime-omancer, ooze-omancer thing. Okay, cool. So let's talk. Gelatinous Cube we have here. I think for the most part, we're going to keep this stuff. I just want to add in the slime trail. So what's tricky about a slime trail power is that it doesn't have... I don't think there's a lot of precedent in 3rd edition, or sorry, in 5th edition for a slime trail ability. You know what I mean? Or anything like that that really overtly affects the terrain. 5th edition, I think, tries to lean a little bit more into theater of the mind, which means they have fewer abilities that specifically reference difficult terrain. I'm trying to think if there's anybody that, like, tears up the ground or does anything like that. I might look at, like, the Jorn or the Umber Hulk or something, because that's essentially what we're looking at, right? Like, the passage of the cube creates this this slime trail. Tunneler doesn't say anything about it on the Umber Hulk. I'll look at the Jorn, but I think the Jorn, like, phases through rock. So I don't think they make difficult terrain. Oh, you know what? Let's look at the like a Blight or something that has like an entangle power, because that has some of that anyway. That's at least the only monster I can think of that actively, like, creates its own difficult terrain. Yeah, grasping roots and vines sprout in a 15-foot radius centered on the Blight. So I think it's something about, like, the area that a cube, like, for 1 minute, the area the cube is passed through is coated in a slime trail, right? This is difficult terrain. Okay, so let's go down here. Let's go slime trail. Oh, does the flail snail have that? Let me go look. I have Tomb of Annihilation, and that has the flail snail in it. I'm gonna go grab the flail snail. Good thinking, Nuker Wolf. I don't know why it didn't occur to me to think of an actual slug. Okay, flail snail it is. Sorry, guys. Here we are. Let's check. That's a very good thinking, Nuker. Flail snail. Oh, I don't think it has it. Darn. It has an anti-magic shell, flail tentacles. Damn, no, it doesn't have a slime trail. Shoot. That's a good thing, right? That's a good thing. That's a good thought. Boy, I can't talk today. Slime trail, slime trail. I almost want to Google if any 5th edition monster has one. Yeah, maybe it's just flavor. I'll check and see what it says. There's nothing in Tomb of Annihilation, but that doesn't mean that it's not somewhere else, right? Like, damn. Okay. So how would we word this? The space that the area that a gelatinous cube. What? How do you spell it? Cube moves through the 10-foot area, 10-foot wide area that a gelatinous cube moves through. The gelatinous cube leaves a 10-foot wide slime trail. Yeah. Gelatinous cube leaves a 10-foot wide slime trail behind it for 1 minute, or whenever it moves. Yeah, whenever the gelatinous cube moves. This is what I mean about, like, 5th edition wording, right? Whenever the gelatinous cube moves, it leaves a 10-foot wide slime trail behind it for 1 minute. Because it can't last forever, right? But it's got to be long enough that way it isn't just, like, for a round, you know. You could also do it where it's like there's a certain distance behind it, but I feel like it's got to be more about where it went, you know. It leaves behind. Yeah, let's go. It leaves behind a 10-foot wide slime trail for 1 minute. Any creature that enters this area. Ooh, the Fade Boggle. Where would a fellow find a boggle if we were looking for such a creature? Let me see if I can pull up a boggle here in D&D Beyond. Boggle. Thanks, Nuker Wolf. Appreciate you helping me out there. Oh, of course. I just Googled Boggle, and it comes up with the board game. Boggle. Boggle oil. It excretes. Ooh, I like excretes. Yeah. Oil puddle. Ooh, creates a puddle of oil that is either slippery or sticky. The puddle is 1 inch deep and covers the ground. Yeah, that's great. Okay. It creates a... Very good, Nuker Wolf. It creates a slime trail that is... Or it creates a slime trail. I think we do this. I think we go like, it leaves behind a slime trail. A sticky slime trail. A sticky slime trail. The trail is 10 feet wide. 10 feet wide. 1 inch deep. And covers the ground. And covers any ground the cube moved through in the past minute. The cube moved through in the past minute. Yeah, there we go. Moved through in the last minute. The trail is difficult terrain for all creatures. Oh, here we go, yeah. Creatures except the cube, yep. And lasts 1 minute. Yeah, so let's do, covers, oh sure, is 10 feet wide and 1 inch deep. Is 10 feet wide, 1 inch deep, and yeah, that's interesting. Covers any ground the cube moved through in the last minute. So I think we just get rid of it and lasts 1 minute. We get rid of that and we just say, yeah, in the last minute. Okay, and then we go a new paragraph here, and we go any creature that enters the trail must make a... Ooh, what about a sticky paralytic DC 13? Oh no, what am I doing? Sticky paralytic slime trail. We'll still have the 1 minute here. Yeah, let's get rid of that. Sticky paralytic slime trail. It's kind of a Frankenstein's monster of a stat block. Let's see, on a sticky trail, a trail of paralytic slime. A sticky trail of paralytic slime. Yeah, a sticky trail of paralytic slime. The trail is 10 feet wide, 1 inch deep, and covers any ground the cube moved through in the last minute. The trail is difficult terrain for all creatures except the cube. Except cubes. Except gelatinous cubes. Because you could have multiple ones, right? Gelatinous cubes. Any creature that enters the trail is grabbed. I think you just are automatically grabbed by it, right? That's any creature that sets foot that touches the trail is grabbed. Escape DC. What would the DC be there? What's the escape DC of the save? Escape DC 12. And must make a DC 12 Constitution saving throw, or be paralyzed for 1 minute. Paralyzed, is that a condition in... I think it's a condition, yeah. Is incapacitated, can't move or speak. Yeah, I like that. A paralyzed creature can repeat the saving throw at the start of each. I like that it's for 1 minute. Yeah, it's like a ghoul. Yeah, let's look up the wording on the ghoul, on how that works. Paralyzed for 1 minute. The target can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on a success. Let's just copy it. The target can repeat the saving throw at the end of each one of its turns, ending the effect on a success. Cool. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Ability, Slime Trail. It messes with like the perfect the cube is so like well balanced in its stat block. But yeah, I think that's we're also gonna remove the pseudopod. Get that pseudopod out of here. There we go. So what's interesting about that is that then that means like if you think about it, like I almost want to crunch the numbers on this. So at the Gelatinous Cube's current speed, right? It's got 15 feet. Let's say that it left that behind a minute ago, and it's moving about 30 feet around, right? It's not absorbing anything. So if it's moving 30 feet around for 1 minute, then, and it's at the absolute utmost end of the trail, then in 10 rounds, it's 300 feet away, right? Each round, then, it moves back over it. What if we say that the trail is difficult terrain for all creatures except Gelatinous Cube? It's difficult terrain for all creatures except for Gelatinous Cubes. And we make a point like Gelatinous Cube's speed is doubled while on the slime trail, right? That they can like move quickly back across it. That's why they're faster, right? Is that they can shoot themselves along. So they actually move at double speed then along the queue, along the trail. I like that a lot because that's the whole purpose of it. It creates this like racetrack almost behind it. Yeah. That's cool. It's difficult terrain for all creatures except Gelatinous Cubes, or who move at double speed. Who move at, or whose speed is doubled. Whose speed is doubled when. How would you phrase that? It's difficult terrain for all creatures except Gelatinous Cubes. Oh, I think you flip it around. You go Gelatinous Cubes move at double speed. Gelatinous Cubes move at. How does Expeditious Retreat phrase it? Because doesn't that double your speed? Or does that just let you dash a lot? Oh yeah, when you cast a spell and then as a bonus action on each of your turns until the spell ends, you can take the dash action. No, it's the Tabaxi that has the speed doubling thing, right? Yeah, the Tabaxi does. It's like, so there's some way to do that. I think I had a Tabaxi wizard in a party once that was just like the fastest. Yes, when the Gelatinous Cube, when a Gelatinous Cube, yeah, so let's do this. Let's go back. Let's do when a Gelatinous Cube moves along the trail, moves backwards, or moves, let's see, moves on the trail, their speed is doubled. So that's how you explain why they go so quick, because they're sliding along the slime trail. Yep. Bingo bango. I love that. Oh, I didn't know. I see. I didn't put it in. Okay, so add ability. We removed pseudopod. Yeah, okay, there we go. There's the new cube. I love that. And that's actually a pretty simple change, right? So then you're paralyzed. I love that too because like you're paralyzed, you can keep making the save, but then you still have to try to escape, right? Let's maybe break up that sentence a little bit just because it's a little klutzy. Is grabbed, escape DC 12, a grabbed creature. A creature that starts its turn grabbed must make a DC 12 Constitution saving throw or be paralyzed for 1 minute. Yeah, I think that's fine. Okay, cool. Oh, I gotta do that again. So add ability, good. And then update this. And then we have our new cube. Cool. So that's one chunk of it. It's cool, actually, because that's two different things, right? We got rid of the... oh, yes, and then I wanted to say... We want to put into engulf that it's like while it has a creature inside of it. Yeah, let's go to The cube can only hold one large creature up to 4 creatures. So let's put it in there in ooze cube. While it has a creature engulfed, the cube moves at half speed. Yeah, so that's kind of the trade-off there. I think it might honestly be worth it to increase the CR by 1. Let's take this guy to a 3. Because I think that Slime Trail really adds a lot, right? It makes the cube move faster, it paralyzes you, it holds you in place. You know what I mean? Ooh, we should say that the trail is invisible. Yeah. The Slime Trail is 10 feet wide, 1 inch deep, is invisible, 10 feet wide and 1 inch deep. Trail is invisible, 10 feet wide and 1 inch deep, and covers any ground the cube moved through in the last minute. Yeah, there we go. Okay, now the cube is done. Cool. Love it. So then let's export that. Save stat block, view image. Maybe this actually won't be that long of an episode, because I think all we have to do now is like write these stat abilities or come up with the CRs for these guys. Because I might not want to literally sit down and just crunch the numbers like how many hit points should this have? How many blah, 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 blah. So let's go through the alternate cubes and let's try to rank them by how difficult we think they are to fight, like what their CRs should be. So we don't need Speedy Cube anymore. We're just going to do these 4. So it's Illusory Cube, Super Cube, Stealthy Cube, and Baby Cube. So I definitely think Baby Cube is the bottom, right? Baby Cube is our lowest tier cube. And then my instinct, of course, is just to say that Super Cube is the top, right? So then we have the other 2 in between. I think it's Stealthy Cube and then Illusory Cube. Because I feel like, yeah. And Stealthy Cube, like, doesn't need to be, yeah. I almost want to think of one more. If we make Speedy Cube be, the, what was I going to say? Part of the normal cube. I want to brainstorm one other idea of, like, a weird cube power. Like, I almost like the idea of, like, a petrification cube or something, right? Where, like, it ate a Medusa or a Gorgon or a Cockatrice, and then it absorbs you, and then you turn to stone inside of it instead of dissolving, right? That's kind of cool. So let's think about that. Let's think about another cube idea, because it'd be cool to have 5 alternate cubes. As well. But Baby Cube, I think, is pretty simple. It's like a CR, like 1/2 or something, right? I think it has no engulf, no slime trail. It's just kind of like if you wanted a little cube for like a familiar or something, right? I think it's got an attach style ability. Let me look up how attach works, because I like the idea of it like glomming onto like your foot or your hand or something. You know, it can't engulf you, but it can stick to you and try to eat you up. So let's go to the Sturge. Because I want to get the wording here specifically, but we don't just have to punch it into Tetra Cube. I feel like that might be a little boring. So let me get the wording exactly, because that can sometimes be tricky. Sturge. Okay, so blood drain. So I think it's got like a pseudopod attack. Pseudopod, or yeah, it's got a little like attach ability. It makes an attack roll. You know, attack roll, and the Baby Cube, and we won't call it Baby Cube or whatever, right? Like attaches to the target. The target, while attached, the cube doesn't attack. Instead, at the start of each of the cube's turns, the target takes, you know, X acid damage. And then like the cube can detach itself, by spending 5 feet of its movement. I don't think it has. The Sturge has a thing where it says like it does so after it drains 10 hit points from the target, or if the target dies. It does so when the target dies. I think we have to say that. And then it says a creature, including the target, can use an action to detach it. But I don't think you can do that without it like because if you try to grab it, I think you have to like shake it off, right? Like a creature can the target can use an action to shake the cube off. Use an action to shake the cube off. Oh, I also think it's faster. I think it's got like a 30-foot move speed. Little speedy cube zooming around. 30-foot move speed. So the idea is, right, that like it's not that hard to shake it off. You know, insert Taylor Swift joke here. But like what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to fuck up the action economy. So you put them in an encounter with another gelatinous cube, and now there's like half a dozen of these little guys zipping around the fight, like nomming onto your legs and your hands and stuff, right? And then you're kind of like slowed down, and it's eating you. I mean, you can stop it, you can take an action to get rid of it, but then that's taking an action doing that instead of fighting or running away from the cube. So they're not meant to be like serious competitors, right, or serious threats. They're just kind of like a little annoyance that you throw into another gelatinous cube encounter. Yeah, I think that works. So then if we say that the new cube is CR3, then I think that the most difficult I want to get with this is maybe a CR10 for the super cube, right? So I think we can say that. I think we can say super cube is CR10. But then that means like CR like 5, maybe CR 5, and then like CR what, like 8 for the Illusory Cube. I kind of think that works. So CR 5, obviously it would mean more hit points and stuff, but like I think Stealthy Cube's thing has got to be, I think that it's invisible, right? It's got stealth training, got a stealth bonus, and I think it's transparent ability. Its transparent ability is you add like when the cube, or if the cube hasn't moved since its last turn, the cube turns invisible. Right? They're like, they are transparent, but they're not really like, how is it specifically worded here? It's like, even when the cube is in plain sight, it takes a successful DC 15 Wisdom Perception check to spot a cube that is neither moved nor attacked. Creature that tries to enter the cube space while unaware of the cube is surprised by the cube. Like, that is all still true, but I like the idea that you give it this thing where like it can, if it doesn't move at all, it turns invisible. So there's not even a chance you can see it, right? I almost want to give it like a sneak attack thing. You know what I mean? I'm trying to think of like other ways that the cube could be extra stealthy, like if we're heightening the stealth angle of it, right? Like, could it sneak attack feels too much, right? Like, if they're surprised by it, because like the way that ooze cube works is that other creatures can enter the space, but a creature that does so is subjected to the cube's engulf and has disadvantage on the saving throw. So there is no way to beef that, really. Creatures inside the cube can be seen but have total cover. Creature within 5 feet of the cube can take an action to pull a creature or object out of the cube. Hey, what's up, Hunter? Thanks for coming. Yeah, we are talking about the Gelatinous Cube, and we're designing cube variants. We have the Stealthy Cube right now, which is specifically trained in stealth. It's a little higher CR, and it's got a reverse sneak attack. Yeah. If the cube hasn't moved since its last turn, the cube turns invisible. I almost want to give it like a squeeze ability, right? Where it can like squeeze into doors and it can do stuff like that. Maybe it's smaller. I don't know. Because the cube, like, is a 10 foot by 10 foot square. It's a large ooze. It takes up its entire space. But engulf moves up to its speed. While doing so, it can enter larger, smaller creatures' spaces. Maybe make a point that, like, when it moves, it remains invisible. Unless it has a target. Hunter Fox says, do you ever feel like stealth enemies that get bonuses to sneak attacks are one-trick ponies? I find that once they sneak attack, they got nothing else interesting. That's an interesting point, Hunter. I wonder if we can try to address that here. When it moves, it remains invisible unless it has a target grabbed. I think we remove the slime trail. I think the stealthy cube doesn't have one. Remove slime trail. So that's a target engulfed. Squeeze makes sense. Maybe half speed through small paths. Yeah, let's give it squeeze. Squeeze. What's a creature that has squeeze? Just so that way I can see the. I know a lot of oozes do. Let's go look at the black pudding. I like squeeze. I wanted to have one other cool, like, unique thing. Oh, it's if the cube remains motionless. That's the phrase. If the cube remains motionless. Oh, but then it's when it moves, it remains invisible. So maybe we change this to, like, hey, what's up, Grant? Thanks for coming. When it moves, it takes a DC 15 wisdom perception. We just, like, rephrase how transparent is worded. Yeah, black pudding's got it. Swarms do, I think. Yeah, I think they have a thing just called swarm, but I think it's essentially the same language. Let's go to for ooze. I want the sneaky cube to have one other interesting trait or thing. Oh, it's amorphous. That's what the ability is called. Amorphous. I think it'd be after. Yeah, stealth bonus it would have, and then, like, amorphous. The cube can squeeze through a space as narrow as. But I like the idea that it isn't like 1 inch. I think it's like 5 feet wide or whatever, right? That, like, it can squeeze through, but it's not. It's smaller than that, right? Let's maybe just do 1 inch wide. Because, like, yeah, it's a cube. It has to retain its cube form, right? But it can squeeze through and then bloop, come back out. Yeah, it, like, drains itself. So I think 1 inch wide is fine. So it's amorphous, it's transparent, doesn't have the slime trail. I wanted to have one other thing. I like Hunter Fox's point about a lot of times stealthy creatures, once they do their thing, they can't really do anything else. And we have the Illusory Cube, which, like, my instinct is that, like, it once it has you engulfed, it makes you invisible again. But I think that's what the Illusory Cube does, right? Like, the Illusory Cube is kind of like a Wile E. Coyote wall, where it makes itself look like a doorway or something, right? It projects an image onto one of its sides, and then you, like, reach into it or walk into it, and then it's almost like a mimic, right? Yeah, I was thinking about that, Grant, but I feel like if it's just purely invisible, it doesn't really need camouflage. And we have the Illusory Cube, which I think does a similar thing. So there's kind of some overlap with these two, but I love the idea of the Illusory Cube being able to project things onto it, right? Like, hey, here's a magic item in the middle of the floor, and you walk towards it, and it is actually just a cube, right? Like, it's got a little bit of that mimic in there, which I like. I'm trying to think of, like, is there something that the cube can do once it grabs you that makes it unique, something else that, like, other cubes don't have? And we could just, like, increase its acidity or whatever, but I feel like it's got to have some other thing. Like, does it put you to sleep, or, like, you know what I mean? I'm trying to think of what it does. We can come back to it, maybe. A blink step? Oh my gosh, that's pretty powerful for a cube. Like a teleporter. It's got squeeze. So I feel like it's moving by, you know, like after attacks it can bam if it misses. Well, the thing with the cubes is that they don't attack, right? They engulf. At least our cubes do anyway. We could give it a pseudopod back. I don't hate that, I guess. I mean, the way we've done our cubes is that they are kind of a little bit more passive, right? Like, I kind of think sleep is interesting. So like if you get engulfed, then you fall asleep and you can't really like resist or pull yourself out. That's pretty nasty. Yeah, let's say that like it has a sleeping effect. While inside the cube, you make a saving throw against that's what we're gonna do for the illusory cube, Grant. That's this guy. It mimics its surroundings. While inside the cube, you make a saving throw against boy, going unconscious. Like, because like normally sleep works where when you take damage, you wake up. So it has to be a thing where you I mean, maybe it just paralyzes you more. Yeah, I don't know, because I like sleep. I think that makes that feels stealthier. But if you're in the cube, right, then you are more likely to then you're gonna take damage every round and it's gonna wake you up. Yeah. Oh, no worries, Grant. You're good. No worries. Let me look at how like drow sleep poison works. It's also unconscious while poisoned this way. It wakes up if it takes damage or if another creature takes an action to shake it awake. So we could just say that like it yeah, Hunter Fox makes a good point about like my fear for sleep is that what if a solo player gets engulfed and is then put to sleep and they have no agency to save themselves? Yeah, you're probably right. You know what? I think we might be overthinking it. I think we can increase the hit points. Maybe we make it a little smaller so its armor class is a little higher and we just leave it there. Maybe we say that this is like CR4 instead of CR5. You know? Like increase hit points. Increase armor class. The only other thing I was thinking of, and this isn't like a stealthy cube thing, but I could see it having a an adhesive power where it can like grab your items. Like if you attack it, it can absorb that stuff, right? Like what if we do something where it's like greeny cube or whatever, right? Or like absorbent cube. Absorbent cube. Maybe this one is like CR6 or whatever, CR6. And then we increase the armor class, and we give it an ability where, ooh, silence. Maybe Grant's got it. Maybe it's silence. I like silence a lot. I'm trying to figure out how it works. Like, it's got to in some way work with the cube where, like, while you're inside of it, it's silent. But, like, normally you can't talk inside a cube anyway because, you know, you can't breathe in there. But I love the idea of silence. Yeah, that's very cool. Does it have, like, a silent aura around it? Yeah, silence aura. I think it's got to be a relatively, like, small one. But I think silence could be cool. I'm just trying to figure out how you mechanize that. Like, what is the narrative there beyond it just being like it's quiet, right? Like, it eats sound. It deadens it. Yeah. What if you say that it has resistance, thunder damage, and then it has a silence aura. So within 15 feet of the cube, you know, all creatures are deafened or whatever, right? There's something like that where you know, it has the effect of a silence spell. Which is cool because A, it makes it stealthier, but then B, you can't cast spells in that. It's almost like an anti-magic cone. You can't cast any spells that have verbal components. If it has a silence aura, then I definitely think we go up to CR5. Yeah, cool. Perfect. Increase armor class. So with Absorbent Cube, I like the idea of it having the adhesive trait. Adhesive trait. Let me look up the mimic. Adhesive. The cube adheres to anything that touches it. Including weapons. So like whenever a creature makes a weapon attack against the cube, they must make a melee weapon attack against the cube. They must make a an X, strength saving throw. Maybe just strength or dexterity saving throw, dexterity saving throw, or else their weapon becomes adhered to the cube. I think you give it resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. I was just thinking that, Hunter Fox, about it being able to absorb, it being immune to that type. Oh my god, Hunter, that's so good. I was thinking about it either like bouncing the spell, but like the idea of it absorbing the spell damage type, and then it's immune to it, and then it generates an aura. Like the person inside the cube takes extra damage. That's so cool. Yeah. Bludgeoning. Let's say it's resistant to bludgeoning and piercing. That like you could still slash it. Let's just give it all three. This is a CR6 monster. I think that's fine. Becomes adhered to the cube, and then it's similarly got the like a huge or smaller creature. Because I was thinking about a redirect too, Grant. That was my original thought. Is that it could like bounce him off. It could take it in and then shoot it back. But I actually think it like eating it and turning that spell into an aura is awesome. That's great. A huge or smaller creature adhered to the cube. Is also grappled by it, right? And can be engulfed. So I like that if you come up to attack it or punch it or something like that, right? That like you get stuck to it, and then next round it can engulf you, right? Okay, so then it's also got spell absorption. Spell absorption? How do you spell that word? I don't know. Absorption? I don't know. Whenever the cube is targeted or is hit by a spell, oh, how would you frame that? Or whenever it takes that kind of damage, whenever the cube takes acid, fire, what are the different damage types? Damage types 5e. I think we could pick the specific ones, right? Acid, bludgeoning, no. Acid, cold, fire. Cold, fire. I like the idea that force still hits it. Lightning. I don't think necrotic or radiant affect it. I think it's like poison, thunder. Right? Poison or thunder damage. So radiant and necrotic still work. Force still works. Because I don't necessarily think it has to be a spell, Hunter. I think like imagine somebody with like a flaming sword, right? So you slash at it with the flaming sword, and then it like peels the fire off of it, right? Like whenever the cube takes acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison, or thunder damage, it gains immunity it gains immunity to that type. I think it still takes it, right? I don't think it like it I don't think it like negates the damage. I think it takes the damage, right? And then it gains the vulnerability. So you could do a thing where like if I have two different spells, right, where it's like if I have Firebolt and Lightning Lure or whatever, Acid Splash, and I'm a wizard, and I shoot Firebolt at the absorbent cube, and then it absorbs the fire. It still takes the fire damage, but then it absorbs it and eats it, and then it sends it out as an aura. If I do another Firebolt again, it's meaningless, right? It does nothing. But then if I do Acid Splash, then it takes the acid and switches to acid. So it always has one kind of element that it's got, right? And it's just kind of like moving back and forth between them. So the way to beat it is to constantly be switching the kinds of spells you're using, right? As opposed to like just nailing onto absorption with a P. Yeah, I have a terrible dyslexia, so I appreciate that. You know what I mean? So it's like you have to kind of switch back and forth, like my finger guns. Pew 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 pew. It gains immunity to that damage, to that damage type. Creatures engulfed by the cube take an additional XDX damage of that type. It gains immunity to that damage type. The cube can only have one damage type absorbed at a time. Yeah. So that you're constantly switching it back and forth, right? Is kind of how that works. Yeah, I think that's good. I like that a lot, actually. That's a really nice, clean one. So, Illusory Cube. Yeah, I think it's got a resistance. Maybe it gains resistance to it. I think it's okay to take the full, because I feel like that's the way to fight it, right? Is that like it has resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing anyway, and it can steal your weapons. And if it has resistance to different damage types, right? Like I feel like it's already pretty tough. Halves the elemental damage. Yeah, I don't hate that. You're right. It halves the elemental damage. It halves the elemental damage, or it halves the damage, and absorbs the element or the damage type. While absorbed, it halves the damage and gains immunity to that damage type for 1 minute. Creatures engulfed by the cube take an additional XCX damage of that type. If the cube takes damage, yeah, I think that's fine. I like that. It halves the damage and gains immunity to it going forward. Oh, does it? I don't think it actually has immunity to acid, Grant. I don't believe that the Gelatinous Cube does not have acid immunity. Isn't that crazy? It does not have acid immunity in 5th edition. Nope. It's got a bunch of condition immunities, but no acid immunity. Okay. And then it's got... Because I actually kind of think that makes sense, right? That it's like different types of acid wouldn't necessarily get along. Let's go to Illusory Cube. So the Illusory Cube we have as... C5, it has CR8. The idea here is that it has sort of a false appearance thing, right? That, like, false appearance. I think this one also has no slime trail because it's trying to be stealthier. No slime trail. Or I think it can have the slime trail, but the point is that it just doesn't move. Like, I think that the stealthy cube, which you might call like a stalker cube, comes after you, but I think the illusory cube sits and waits, right? So it has a false appearance, like while the cube remains motionless, it is indistinguishable from whatever scene, whatever image it is displaying on its face. So it's got some kind of an illusion power. I'm trying to think of a creature that does illusions as like, not as a spell, but like hallucination spores, spell casting, like, let's maybe we'll look up some illusion spells. So like major image. Cube can create the image of an object or creature or some other visible phenomena. Okay, so Illusory face. Illusory face. Or facade. The cube can create the image of an object, a creature, or some other visible phenomenon that is no larger than a 10-foot cube. Than a 10-foot cube. Grant says, so it could sit in a room with illusion gold at its center. That's exactly right, David. Exactly. Right. I could see, again, I like the idea of like a Wile E. Coyote thing where it's like, oh, there's a long corridor, and at the end of the corridor, there's a door. Right. And you go down and you try to grab the door, and then you realize that it's actually just like painted on to the side of the cube. Right. And then, it pulls you in. Grant says, yeah, they don't have acid resistance. Isn't that crazy? Or immunity. Nothing. Like they are just, like, that's what I mean. Like, they feel kind of underwhelming where they're at right now. We could add acid resistance or immunity back into our standard cube here if we wanted. That would be a huge deal. It's no larger than a 10-foot cube. The image appears. It's totally, yeah, it's Wile E. Coyote. It's a Looney Tunes doorway. Exactly. The image appears on the cubes, on one of the cubes, on one or all of the cubes' faces. I like the idea that the cube can't broadcast different things. So you might be able to trick it because it's actually broadcasting that on like all four corners, right? That it can't do different screens, that it's like one image. So if it's a door, then it's a door on all 6 sides of it, right? It seems completely real. It seems completely real, including sounds, smells, and temperature appropriate to the thing depicted. It can't create sufficient heat or cold. A sound loud enough. I think that's fine. I don't think you have to go that deep into it. It's just like including. Actually, let's maybe leave it there because I think saying it seems completely real is too much. As long as you're within the range of the illusion, you can use your action. Blah blah blah. Physical interaction with the image reveals it to be an illusion. A creature that uses its action to examine. Let me get rid of physical interaction. A creature that uses its action to examine the image can determine it is an illusion with a successful or with a DC X intelligence investigation check against. Yeah, Will there be an investigation DC if a player tries investigating a room or area like yeah, exactly. Maybe there's a bit of a delay, I think, because I'm that's exactly what I'm writing. Yep. This action to examine the image can determine it's an illusion with a DC X intelligence investigation check. I'm trying to figure out like how do you stack these things, because like I like the idea that if someone comes up to examine it, right, they can determine that it's an illusion. But can they tell that it's a cube? Like, I don't think they know that it's a cube. I think they just know it's an illusion, right? But it doesn't dispel it, and it doesn't like, yeah. I think we also make a change to engulf, where, a creature engulfed by the cube is invisible to. Like, how do you put it when it's like swallowed, right? Like when a creature swallows it, it has no line of sight into or out of the cube. Oh yeah, no worries, David. No worries. David says he's probably a little behind. It is cool. A swallowed creature, an engulfed creature is blinded. Engulfed creature is blinded and restrained Can't breathe, is blinded and restrained, has total cover to effects, total cover against attacks and other effects outside the cube. That it like, I like the idea that it's the opposite of a normal cube, where if you go into it, then you just like shimmer, like almost like a Super Mario 64 with those paintings, right? Like you disappear into it, but the people on the outside still see the original image. They don't see the cube, or they don't see you in there, right? Like they might be able to tell you're struggling or whatever. They might be able to hear you, but you are blinded and restrained while you're inside the cube. It's you know, perfectly illusory. Which I think then means that people on the outside of the cube have disadvantage on trying to pull you out, right? Yeah, I like that. How is that framed? In ooze cube, a creature within 5 feet of the cube can take an action to pull. So that would be under ooze cube. I guess it would be here. Ooze cube. A creature within 5 feet of the cube can take an action to pull a creature or object. A creature or object out of the cube. Doing so requires a successful DC X strength check. Made at disadvantage. And the creature making the check, the attempt, takes XDX acid damage. And obviously I'll go in and fill in the amount of damage that's appropriate for a CR8 monster. But I honestly, that might be enough, because like you could easily see somebody stumbling into one and then being stuck in there and then being very, very hard to pry out. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think that's cool. Okay, so last but not least then, we have the Super Cube. CR10, I think this is basically just like a gigantic cube. Increase HP. Obviously, I think its armor class probably stays the same. Let's maybe give it resistances. Resistances to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. I kind of want to do a split thing here. I kind of want to give it like a Jello thing, where whenever the cube split, whenever the cube takes slashing damage, it creates a baby cube. Like it loses 5 hit points. Whenever the cube takes 5 hit points worth of slashing damage, 5 hit points worth of slashing damage, it creates a baby cube in an adjacent square. You know, and it's just like massive. It's gargantuan. Change size to gargantuan. I'm trying to think what else it could do. Like, do we think the Super Cube should have pseudopods? Like, I kind of like it better if it's just like churning out little Jello squares. Beyond it just being humongous and being able to engulf a bunch of people, right? Like, it's engulf ooze cube. It can engulf vastly more creatures. You know, what can it do right now? It can do only one large creature. It can hold up to like, it's gargantuan size, can hold up to like 8. 4 large creatures, or 2 huge creatures. 4 large creatures. Yeah, 2 huge creatures, 4 large creatures, 8 medium creatures. Up to 8 medium or smaller creatures inside it at a time. I know that Dungeon of the Mad Mage has a big cube in there too. Not humongous. Yeah. Cube-mongous. I'm probably gonna call it like Cube Titan or something like that. Titan Cube. Titanic Cube. Cube-mongous. I know there's a really big one in the first, I think it's the second level of Dungeon of the Mad Mage, but I think it's just like a regular cube with like more hit points and it's a bigger size. I would love this to have a few more like cool powers. Pulling it up right now to see if it's got anything else we can steal. I think it's probably much harder to obviously escape, but I think that's kind of obvious. Like, I like the idea of like a creature with a swim speed having advantage on like escaping. You know what I mean? Like that it's so massive that it has stuff in it. Oh, you know what else we should do? We should do a table of like random cube things that you can find inside the cube. That would be fun. Random like items and stuff. You know, mostly it's bones or whatever, but that like there's got to be a random chance of like a cool piece of gear. I think that was a thing that used to be in the old versions of it. Gelatinous Cube. Yeah, measuring 30 feet on a side is trapped in a room. This gargantuan can hold to 9 large creatures and up to 36. Oh yeah, let's do that. That's great. You can make 4 pseudopod attacks on its turn, and it makes strength checks and strength saving throws with advantage. A cube that's semi-intelligent can mimic shapes, making it able to have new actions based on its new shape. That's kind of cool. That feels very Mimic to me, though, right? Because I feel like what's the real difference now between the cube and the Mimic? I like the idea that like it is bound to the cube form, right? I don't mind the idea of like a semi-intelligent cube, though. That's kind of cool. Yeah, I want to do a table of random items. I might make that a Patreon exclusive. I want one more like cool thing for the cube, for the super cube though, for the Titan cube. Like I almost want to give it like legendary actions or something, but I don't think it needs them if it has all these baby cubes running around, right? Yeah. Gelatinous cube, that size. All right, want to do the engulf thing. Creature with a swim speed. Engulf. A creature with a swim speed has advantage on the check needed to escape. On the escape check. Like a little tiny thing. Like it's so big that you're like swimming through it. It's dissolving you away. I think that's fine. I think it just being enormous, right? And it being able to like move around and slime you up. And its slime trail would get proportionally bigger. I think that's okay. Y'all, I might call it there. That was not as long of a stream as I thought it was going to be. But I'm losing a little bit of steam, I think. I think we have a lot of cool cubes here. We have 5 cubes. Plus the new cube. And then we're going to do the table, right? That has all the cool items on it. Maybe we could do like just for a few minutes, just like do a random brainstorm of like a bunch of crazy stuff you could find in a cube. Because I like the notion that like, yeah, some of it is like roll on the magic item table or whatever, but like some of them are just kind of random stuff. So let's generate like 10 ideas for things, right? So cube items or random cube items. And I would love them to be either like, so the parameters for this is it feels like it should be either like a piece of treasure. Maybe we can briefly expand, making itself thinner or dense so people can actually move in and have speed. That's kind of cool. I was thinking about it being able to expand or shrink, but I feel like it's so big already that expanding it even more. Ooh, yeah, the idea of it like swelling out and coming back in is kind of cool. I kind of think the super cube should be able to have pseudopods, but like maybe not. Maybe that's wrong. I think with the super cube, it is so big that having it expand makes it feel like it, it's already as big as it can literally be. But maybe you're right. Maybe it shrinks. Maybe it like appears smaller and then it goes way out. Yeah, that's cool. So like, expand. So maybe it isn't gargantuan, but it starts huge, right? The Titan cube expands its size to gargantuan, catching X number of, catching and forcing all creatures, like expanding 10 feet in each direction and forcing all creatures to make saves or whatever against engulfing. Yeah, that's cool. That like you see it like, oh my gosh, that's so big, but then it like but then it gets even bigger. Yeah, that's cool. If huge, the Titan Cube can expand its size to gargantuan. Yeah, that's cool. Maybe that's like when it's bloodied or whatever. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so let's generate some random cube items here. Like, so the parameters would be, these are things that are either treasure or in some way could like further narrative, right? Like one of my ideas is like a scroll case containing a treasure map, a map, right? An enchant magic item. You know, roll on magic item table X. But yeah, so you could easily do like, this is kind of 3, I think. I think it's like a minor magic item, moderate magic item, and a major magic item. What about like, obviously the skeleton is classic, right? But like an undead creature, so like a zombie or a skeleton, right? Like a skeleton, but like then, you know, see monster manual. What else could you find in a queue? What else would it have rolled over? That's interesting. Because to me it feels like it's all magic items, right? Like, a time capsule, yeah, is essentially like a scroll case, right? Like, but something like that. Like, that's the trick. It has to be something that like could survive in there. A time capsule, a skull. Because we have a skeleton, so like anyone's remains doesn't really work. Like a couple of them could be different monsters. Ooh, a construct that can't dissolve. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, a construct's head that cannot dissolve, but that's immune to acid. Because like, rather than it being an entire construct, right? The idea of like C-3PO said, ooh, a Modron is kind of cool. Yeah. Emirson Obelix are the black pudding ones. Yikes. A Modron. I want to think of like, I like the idea of a Modron. I'm trying to think of like, what is an acid immune creature? A creature or acid immune creature monster 5e. Like, there's gotta be something that it has immunity to acid, right? Ancient black dragon. Let's say dragons, right? A dragon's egg, like a black dragon's egg, is kind of cool. Acid immunity, black dragon. A mimic has acid immunity. Ooh, a mimic is good. An item that's actually a mimic, like a black pudding, like a mimic, because they have acid immunity. So a mimic inside of a, yes, absolutely. A mimic posing as an item. Oh my god, that's heinous. You go into the cube and then the sword is a mimic, and it's like one of those like crocodile birds, right? Like, oh my god, that's horrible. Clay golem. Oh yeah, clay golems are the head of a clay golem. The head of a clay golem. Clay golem. They're immune to acid. Bunch of dragon stuff. Yeah, I think we could say like a dragon's egg, a black dragon egg. A black dragon's egg. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, I think like a living NPC, right? Like someone who is slowly dying, right? Like a living or a dying NPC, someone you could save, right? That it isn't a PC that gets grabbed in there. Like the idea of a cube encounter where you already see somebody in there who's like, right? Like, and then it's not about defeating the cube so much as it is rushing in and trying to grab them, right? That's what I mean about like, what are some things we could do that are a little bit more fun? Is there some other thing in there? Like my instinct is like a keg of ale or something like that, right? Like a cask of dwarven ale. So that way, like, you know, while inside the cube, you have to make saves against, you know, the poison condition. Like you get drunk while you're in the cube. Things that would change the nature of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We can think of 2 more things that could change it, right? Like the skull is classic. We kind of have the head of the clay golem, so I think that's fine. We have the mimic. We have the skeletons. We have a couple of monsters. I would love like a couple more of those kinds of effects. Ooh, an explosive is cool too. Yeah, something you could light and then blow up the cube from the inside. Ooh, I like that. I don't know how you would do that. Like, what's a... That, or you get swallowed, right? Hunter Fox says that is a chance to go off if they attack the cube. Yeah. I'm trying to think of, like... I guess you could do, like, a keg of black powder. If the cube takes fire damage, the powder goes off. Yeah, that's cool. I like that a lot. That's a great one, Hunter. One more good one, and I think we can call it. Keg of black powder, a cask of dwarven ale, a dying NPC, the head of the clay golem. Like, one more thing they could interact with, right? Like, magic items pretty obvious. Scroll case containing a map is pretty obvious. I'm trying to think of, like, something else you could rescue, but you already have the NPC. How does rope trick work? Because the rope trick is an extra dimensional space, right? So you couldn't have like a rope trick inside there. Rise in the air, and then the rope hangs perpendicular to the ground. Attacks or spells can't cross through the entrance. How long does it last for? 1 hour? Like, what happens if a cube rolls over a rope trick? You know? I almost want this last one to be something very random, right? Like something that has no business being in a dungeon. You know, and it's like, how did that get in there? Like a pipe organ or something. Yeah, right. We have mimics in there. Mimics posing as items. Yeah, I like the idea of like a pipe organ. Like it's not even like a pile of mimic coins. Yeah. I like the idea of it being something that it's the point of it isn't like what the hell, or like an accordion or something. So it like makes noise as it moves. That makes noise as the cube moves. Right, so it's like, you know, as it moves along, the pipe organ is playing this weird sound. So like you hear it first, like, what the hell is that? And then this thing comes around, you know, bagpipes and accordion or something like that. Like I think a pipe organ is funny because it's like it's a massive thing, and you can kind of see it maybe being in a dungeon. Yeah, I think that's fun. I dig that. Okay, cool. Awesome. All right, everybody, that is our Gelatinous Cube stream. Let me go through what we did. So we redesigned the cube. And we have a bunch of stuff like that we added. We went and we put in the slime trail was the big change we made, right? Where now when the Gelatinous Cube moves around, it leaves the sticky trail of paralytic slime. You step in it and it paralyzes you, and then the cube comes around the corner and tries to eat you. We also then brainstormed a bunch of new cubes. We have the baby cube, we have the stealthy cube, we have the absorbent cube, which I thought was really cool. We have the illusory cube. And then we have the super cube, and then we also have this cool table of random items, which I think is kind of a fun little addition. I think that'll be cool for the patrons. So thank you so much, everybody. If you liked this this stream, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We stream multiple times a week. Our next episode would be I think Saturday. I'm doing a Sea of Thieves gaming stream at 5 p.m. PST, so come check that out. If you are already subscribed and want to keep following me, you can check out my content on Twitter. I am at ProDMTimothy on Twitter. You can find me on Patreon. We have a very small, tight-knit little Discord community that's awesome. So if you're on Discord, please come join us there. We would love to have you. In the meantime, if you want to join our Patreon, that is where you would get access to all of this stuff. So I'm going to go and I'm going to synthesize these cubes and turn them into stat blocks. And people who are at the $1 level at our Patreon get access to them. If you're at the $5 level, you have access to the Trove, which is a big, huge hoard of all the things I've created for our Patreon over the years, which includes past monsters we've done, as well as adventures and maps and all kinds of other stuff. So please go and check that out. I think that is everything. I just want to give a quick shout out to everybody who came to the chat. It was a little slow in the beginning, but I appreciate everybody showing up. It was lovely to see Nuker Wolf. Thanks for helping me with the boggle and getting the wording on the slime trail, Nuker Wolf. That was awesome. Thanks, Hunter Fox, for coming. A lot of great ideas you had. I think the absorbent cube one was my favorite, right? With the absorbing the damage and then pouring it out in an aura. That was awesome. Grant, thanks for coming, M. Grant, and having the silence. That was great. I loved that one. It really made the stealthy cube work. And David and I were right on the money with the Looney Tunes doorway. Exactly. Great. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, exactly. You got to come join our Patreon if you want to see these monster stats, my dude. But thank you so much for coming. I will talk to you all. I believe it is Saturday at 5 p.m. PST for our Sea of Thieves stream. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and as always, happy adventuring. I gotta turn on my camera. Here we go. Was I on the side like this the whole time? Oh no, I should have been over here. Oh my gosh, how much of the stream is me like that? Oh, that's so obnoxious. All right, I'll have to watch it back. Until then, happy adventuring.